could come out today. We have about 30 people registered, and so some people are going to be trickling in hopefully in the next 10 or 15 minutes and not miss too much of the day's events. The way this is going to operate is we're going to have some reports from me. We're going to have maybe some reports or something from that's happening over on the Hilo side. We have someone who's going to be showing up from the city and county of Honolulu, hopefully by 1:20, and talk about how wonderful it would be if we ran for the neighborhood board and got involved in that. We'll have a little bit of conversation about getting people to run for office from our party. And we have our good friend Kyle Varner, who's here from wherever he's flown in for the week, who's been a long-time supporter of the party. And he's going to give a featured speech about healthcare. And since he's a medical professional, he has a lot to say on that. Then after that, we're going to break up. We're going to have a little bit of a break, and there's going to be some cookies and brownies and stuff set out for anybody who likes cookies and brownies, which is mainly me. And then we're going to do some, roundtable discussions, break up into small groups so everybody has a chance to meet people and participate and talk about some ideas for what they think the party should be up to. Because God knows we want to have as much input as we can from party people and as much participation from everybody who comes to our meetings. Then when we're finished with that, we'll get each one of those circles will have the circle leader give a report to the whole convention. We'll talk about some of the ideas. We'll see if there's some resolutions people want, and we'll move on from there. And at the end of the day, at 4 or whenever, we will elect our new set of executive committee people. We have one possible, or one very likely open spot for the party treasurer, which we will talk about at the appropriate time. Okay, so let's start with our financial situation. So in the period since Election Day, November 8th, 2016, we have had donations from dues and donations of $2,000, major donations from a couple of wealthy contributors of $2,500, and returns of money that we had donated to campaigns which was not spent of $800. Our expenses during this period have been small. We haven't been doing very much. It's an odd numbered year. So we have bank charges of about $300. Most of that has to do with our online PayPal setup for online donations. There's a charge of a couple of dollars every time we get a donation. And since we're getting a lot of donations from the PayPal, we're okay with paying the money. Office supplies, a couple hundred. Telephone, $425. Events sponsorship, $700. And the convention deposits for the 2 spots, $175. The cost of the convention here in Hilo and in Oahu will probably end up being somewhere along the lines of $1,300. The event sponsorships, we've sponsored 2 events. We sponsored the event that's noted in your brochure at $500 from a donation from one of our major contributors. And we sponsored the event for the medical marijuana people, the Hawaii Veterans Cannabis Alliance, for $200, which took place a couple of weeks ago, that one of our members, Michelle Tippins, who's not here yet, put together. So right now we have $5,300 in cash between our several accounts. And again, after we paid our bills for the convention, that'll go down to about $4,000. Which, considering that this is an odd-numbered year, is not too bad a position to be in. You look at the Republican Party, and they have cash too, but they also have debts of several tens of thousands of dollars. So we're not running into any debts to anybody, which is a good sign for us. In terms of membership, I'm very happy to say that our members in good standing as of yesterday was 95 people, which is compared to 2 years ago at our convention was about 50. And there are several lapsed members who are coming today to the various conventions who, if they pay their dues, become members in good standing, and we'll be over 100 when that happens. I don't think we've been over 100 members in good standing, which means people who are current with their dues in a long, long time, maybe 30 years. So that's really good. What we'd like to see is starting to look forward to 2018, the even number year, when we have a lot more efforts to put out as a political party. So people who are perhaps interested in being a candidate, we'll have a conversation about that a little bit later in the program. So I also have, okay, that's the main thing. I have several other little things to do. We have a sympathy card to circulate for people to sign to a guy named Stanley Cadwallader. Stanley Cadwallader was Jim Neighbors' husband. Jim Neighbors died about 3 days ago. Jim Neighbors and his husband Stanley both voted for Gary Johnson. They put on a nice fundraiser at their home in Kahala for one of our candidates, Arnold Phillips, during the election in 2016. And so we want to send Stan our sympathies today. So the card, Lee, it's at the end of the table. If you can see, there's a sympathy card. And you can circulate that around, and people, if you'd like to write a note to Stan in sympathy for the loss of a good friend, Jim Neighbors, please do put your thoughts in there. We're expecting an individual to come from the city and county of Honolulu. Ah, there he is, back there. Okay, so you're here in-house and on time. Very good. All right, so what we're going to do, if I have the agenda correct, let me just check what I'm doing here, because I'm doing everything in my head, and that's not okay.
So actually, not that much has been happening on Big Island this year. Tracy, did you, in the report you just gave, the financials from Big Island were in there as well?
Yeah, they were included in the $5,000, the $600 something dollars.
All right.
What we're hoping is you can find someone over there who can kind of do what Cindy used to do, and basically just kind of be a rabble rouser and get people excited and getting people doing things. It's like the success of the party is basically on having meetings, places where people can come, and always, you know, if there's a couple new people who come each time, that's how we grow. But it's a lot of work, and if the people over there who are running the party are busy, like, you know, professional people, sometimes these things don't get done. So if you can find someone over there who's basically all they want to do is put together, you know, a dinner or a meeting or whatever, that's perfect. That'll do the job. Also, a candidate or two from there would be great.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the target, because just like you mentioned, a lot of us are still professionals and they're busy 24/7. Like I mentioned in the email this morning, this date couldn't have come at a worse time, basically.
For you.
And you never know, but you know, yeah. We're here and we're doing it. So
who's over there right now? Who do you have on site?
I have Eric, Mike, Blast, and Denver. Collingwood just showed up, and then Kimberly is here too.
Okay. What about Joe?
That's it,
I think Joe Bush was coming, right? And maybe Roger Christie?
Joe Bush couldn't make it. He had another event. He just gave his proxy vote.
Okay. And Roger, I think you talked to him.
Roger, yeah, said he was coming, but he's not here yet.
And John Lane, I asked, but I don't know if he's going to show up.
Yeah, he didn't give me an answer either when he asked me where it was and when it was, but that was it.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm going to go around and let everyone introduce themselves here. Can you see the audience, or do you want to let?
So thank you all for giving me a chance to come before you guys at this wonderful event. So first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm James Skizuski. I work for the City and County Neighborhood Commission Office. So we kind of facilitate the neighborhood board meetings. So a little bit of background about our office. So our the neighborhood boards here on Oahu, I don't know about Hilo, was first created under the Frank Fossey administration, 1973. Let's see here. So a little background about the board members. They're all volunteers. None of them are paid. They all donate their time to the neighborhood boards. Their meetings are once a month. At the meetings, we have representatives from the police department, fire department. The mayor sends a representative. The governor sends a representative. All the representatives and senators and city council members go to their local neighborhood board meetings. Let's see. So there's three kind of organizational parts that go into our organizational chart. So us at the top, Neighborhood Commission Office, we facilitate everything, as well as the Neighborhood Commission, who's made up of members selected by the City Council, a few by the mayor, and then there's one member on the commission that's agreed upon by the mayor and the City Council. So what the Neighborhood Commission does is they kind of handle the neighborhood plan, which is the governing document of the neighborhood boards. It kind of sets the rules and regulations. They also handle complaints. So as far as if board members complain about other kind of board members being out of line or breaching decorum, they can go before the commission and then it becomes a hearing. It's just a way to make sure everybody's voices are heard. And then also the last part of it are the neighborhood boards themselves. So there are 33 neighborhood boards across our island. A few areas that I don't have neighborhood boards is like the airport area. Let's see what other areas. And I think Kenna Point area doesn't have a neighborhood board. They kind of just joined in with the Waianae and Nanakuli. So first of all, we're all at the Neighborhood Commission office. We're all just appointed by the mayor. So he was gracious enough to let us go and be a part of the neighborhood board system. So we have to thank him. Our executive secretary, Sean Hamamoto, his deputy is Romeo Garcia. I put it up here, but you guys have the little thing. So what I'm here to do is just kind of spread out the word about what's available at these neighborhood board meetings and what we do to make them as transparent as possible. So our job in Neighborhood Commission Office is to ensure transparency among the neighborhood boards to the public. So we work with the neighborhood boards to make sure agendas are released 7 days before the meeting, and we post them on our website, and we also mail them out to those who feel like they want them mailed just regular the old-fashioned way. And doing this, we make sure that the public is aware of what's going to be discussed at the neighborhood board meetings. So it's essential that if they feel like they need to come in person, submit testimony, or submit testimony through our website, that is available to them. And it's our job at the Neighborhood Commission Office to make sure their testimony is heard and to make sure that the board isn't doing anything to inhibit testifiers at the meetings. So along with these neighborhood board meetings that are once a month across the island, we have neighborhood assistants or neighborhood liaisons, as we call them, that go from our office that are trained in the three governing documents of the neighborhood boards, which is, like I said, neighborhood plan, sunshine law, which is what we follow to ensure transparency. It requires us to do, like I was saying, the publishing of agendas, and also we use sunshine law to produce minutes, but I'll get to that. So our neighborhood liaisons' roles at the meetings is to make sure all these rules are followed. So they enforce parliamentary procedure, which we are all of us at the Neighborhood Commission office are members of the National Association of Parliamentarians. So it's just like we study up on Robert's Rules of Order, which is like it sets forth the proceedings of the meeting. And so it's like it outlines the ways to set motions first, second. I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with this. If anything, you guys can ask questions afterwards. But also our neighborhood board liaisons are there to ensure that the meetings are going the way they're designed to. So if a community member gets up, we ensure that he's recognized by the board and the chair most of all, because we feel like our neighborhood boards are like the most grassroots form of public participation within our democratic system. Our meetings have spearheaded legislation such as the most recent moped mitigation laws, which have required mopeds to go through safety checks and require them to be registered and have license plates. And that was all just because a group of neighborhood boards got together and they had issues with just the noise and the unregulated way that the mopeds act in our city, at least. And so that's just an example of what our boards are trying to do. Is they get feedback from the community, they produce resolutions, and although the neighborhood boards are only advisory, we feel that if enough of them get together, they represent the community as a whole, which is pretty powerful. So let's see, I got lost, I went on a little tangent there. So what my main purpose is here is just trying to get you guys involved. I mean, and not even get you guys involved, but just let you guys know what resources are available to you guys. And so also if you guys can go and pass on what I'm telling to you guys, and because our biggest issue at the Neighborhood Commission office is people really don't know about us. I mean, I'm sure most of you guys didn't know there was a Neighborhood Commission office, and so my hope is that when I'm coming to you guys and let you guys know what's available to you guys at neighborhood boards, and hopefully you guys can get involved, go on our website. If there's a vacancy in your neighborhood, go ahead and fill it. I mean, all you need to do is to show up at a meeting, prove that you live in the neighborhood that you are, and our liaisons will go ahead and check you, and then just to double check that you live in your respective neighborhood, go ahead, go before the board. And as I know this is Libertarian Party, but I don't think our neighborhood boards are very particular party affiliation. They just want people who are there to improve their community. And I feel like the Libertarian Party is a very good resource for us to improve our communities as a whole. So if there's any questions, I'd like to open it up. I mean, I'm here to, I can elaborate a little bit more, but I also want to know what you guys want.
Because I know quite a bit about the neighborhood board, having served for 5 years.
Oh.
On the Makiki neighborhood, and I know some other libertarians have been active in neighborhood boards, Dick Rowland and Larry Bartley, particularly. Larry, I think, was chair of the Kailua neighborhood board for many years. As James explained, you can show up at a neighborhood board meeting, and if there's a vacancy and you live in the right area, you could get on that neighborhood board. And the other way is you get elected to the neighborhood boards. And when are the elections?
So we just had our last election, which had the most online. So we've kind of spearheaded this new initiative to do online elections, which is people go online, we give them a special source code that they input, and they can go ahead and vote online from the comfort of their home. So I think we had over like 23,000 participants in our last election, and it ran from January to June, or it was from February to June, and then we released the results shortly after.
Okay, so the elections are in the odd numbered years.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so it's not, the elections come in a year where we don't have the general election, the neighborhood board elections. So in most cases, if you take out papers and you run for neighborhood board, you get elected because there's a shortage of candidates. And one of the things that's important to people like James is to try and fill those seats, get people involved on the board. And as a libertarian on the board, you're often the only person there who's saying maybe we shouldn't do something that someone in the neighborhood wants to do, or maybe we should listen to 3 people who showed up who are complaining about something when you know there's 30,000 people in the neighborhood who may not feel that way. So it's very important, particularly for a libertarian, to be that one voice on the neighborhood board that can kind of get the conversation away from more intrusive solutions to every problem. The other thing that you need to know is every resolution that's passed by the neighborhood board must be passed by a majority of the people on the neighborhood board. So if 5 people didn't show up that night, and the majority requires 9 of 17, your one vote could stop a bill from going through, a resolution. Now, neighborhood boards resolutions do not have any legal authority, but the legislators pay attention to them. So it's good to show up. It's also good if you want to be a candidate for public office to find the neighborhoods in your community where the meetings are. Go to the meetings, find out what people are talking about. Think about what answers you want to have if you go door to door to the things which are coming out at some of these meetings. Okay? Yes, Ken?
I'm wondering, since it's advisory only, I'm wondering, can you think of an example of a significant case where the neighborhood boards actually caused the city council to change its position on something?
Well, they bring things up, and sometimes bad ideas are killed, which is like when I was on the neighborhood board, they wanted to put calming devices onto Nahoa Street in Upper Makiki that goes by Roosevelt High School, because people were complaining that madmen were going 35 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone. So if they put in these calming devices, it would narrow the street. And it's like, okay, this is a major thoroughfare for rush hour traffic going from Manoa to downtown and to Punahou School. I mean, are these people thinking? Well, no, because they're mostly people who don't drive. Sitting there home at night, hearing people speed. It's just not a good idea. So, and then there are other things about, well, if somebody's coming on their show, they want to have new sidewalks put in, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, well, How much skin do you have in the game in terms of these sidewalks? Are you guys, do you think the neighborhood should pay anything? No, no, no. Someone else should always pay for whatever we're asking for. Which is, you know, if you guys are willing to participate, you know, you've got something. So again, it's really important to show up at these meetings and to participate and get on this board. Because you've got to have more than the point of view, because the people who are attracted to neighborhood boards tend to be people who are, should I say, professional busybodies. And you know, it's supposed to be a neighborhood, it's supposed to be a community thing where everybody shows up. And most people don't want to get involved in politics. They sit at home until something's really bad, and then they scream. It's like when we had the van cams. The van cams went forward through every hearing and every blah until they went out on the road, and then all of a sudden, hundreds of thousands of drivers said, what happened? Because the people who show up at the meetings are people who are professional busybodies, where the rest of the people wait until something is bad happening. And they say, why did this happen? Well, because you didn't show up, you didn't participate. People should show up and participate in this process. You have anything to add?
Yeah. So I'd just like to add that she's right. I mean, there are a lot of professional busybodies, and you'd be surprised at what they are able to get done in their communities. I mean, you'll see someone come on and complain about a broken sidewalk or a light fixture needs fixing here, and it's actually our job at the Neighborhood Commission office to make sure that when these issues are brought up, that they're actually forwarded to the Department of Transportation or this and that, and try and get a response from them on how they're going to address the issue. So this is, that's why I want to stress the importance to you guys to let your communities know and for you guys to get involved, because people are listening at these meetings and we try and actually help things get done in the community. I mean, most recently, I can think of a handful of times where someone will come to me, let me know of a issue in their neighborhood, a cracked sidewalk or this and that, and I forward it, and the next thing you know, a couple weeks later, they're actually out there addressing the issue just because we actually brought it to them and let them know that people are actually worried about this and that.
Thank you, James.
No
I
problem.
hope we'll get more involved.
Thank you guys.
It's always a delight to be in a room with libertarians. You guys are like my intellectual family, and I'm always very happy to be here. I'm going to start off with a confession. I am a member of one of America's most disruptive and destructive cartels in the history of this country. It's the healthcare cartel. And it is a government-supported cartel that is robbing each and every one of you of thousands of dollars per year. It's inhibiting the quality of medical care that you receive. It's inhibiting the progress of medical science. And ultimately, it's shortening your lifespan. Now, a lot of people in the 2016 election decided that they would vote for Donald Trump because they wanted smaller government, and they didn't feel that our candidate, Governor Gary Johnson, had a chance to win. They told us that they'd be wasting their vote if they voted for the most qualified candidate with the best ideas. They really wanted to repeal Obamacare and fix health care. I'll have news for the Trump voters out there. You wasted your vote. You see, health care in America is like a train headed for a cliff. Before the Affordable Care Act, it was going about 185 miles an hour, nearing the cliff of financial and humanitarian crisis. After the Affordable Care Act, the train went faster. 195 miles an hour, the cliff getting ever closer. And people getting very desperate and very frustrated, listening to con men like Bernie Sanders tell them that everything will be all right as long as we allow bureaucrats to take over the system. Well, the reality is that as long as we allow bureaucrats to continue to be involved in the system, and as long as we allow the cartels to maintain their power, that train is going to speed up and get closer to the cliff. Eventually, it's going to go off the cliff, and we're going to have a very, very rough time here in the United States. And I'm standing here today before the one group of people who can save us, libertarians. So I'd like to give you guys an overview of why healthcare is in crisis in America, and why it is that only libertarian ideas can bring us out of this crisis. So it's a pretty bold claim to say I'm a member of a cartel, of a destructive and vicious cartel, but it is absolutely true. In economic terms, a cartel is a group of businesses who work together to control the market, keep out competitors, and drive up prices. And here in Hawaii, we've seen a very high-profile fight with cartels, which has gone in a very good way. And I'm talking about Uber and taxi drivers. Taxi drivers in Hawaii created a cartel by lobbying for a licensing scheme that made the barrier to entry to the taxi profession very high. And as a result, prices for taxis were high. The quality of service people received was low. And then something miraculous happened. Ride-sharing hit the scene. And all of a sudden you could get out your phone and a friendly driver at a low price would pick you up and take you to your destination. Everyone was very happy. This exploded. Everybody started using Uber and Lyft. And the taxi cartels got very mad. And they went to the government and they said, hey, these guys don't have background checks. How do we know they have good insurance? How do we know they're qualified drivers? How do we know their cars are safe? You have to protect consumers from the ravages of the free market. Meanwhile, consumers were saying, hey, don't make us get back into those dirty, disgusting taxis with the rude drivers who overcharge us. And there was a lot of legislative fighting. I just flew in from Santiago de Chile last night, and for the first time ever, landing at the Honolulu International Airport, I was able to get an Uber at the airport. That was a victory over the cartels. But my profession is a cartelized profession as well. It's very hard to become a medical doctor, and even harder to get a license to practice medicine. And most people would say, well, gosh, we need licensure boards to keep unqualified practitioners out of practice. The reality is that there are plenty of unqualified practitioners practicing with their medical licenses. But the other reality is that there are plenty of very qualified people who can't practice medicine. And when they can't practice medicine, you have situations like we have here in the state of Hawaii, where our neighbor islands especially can't find doctors. And so people go for months and months on waiting lists, trying to get the medical care that they need. Meanwhile, there are hundreds and hundreds, thousands and thousands of doctors, both in the United States and out of the United States, perfectly qualified to help them, but they can't do it. And prices go up. Now, I went to a foreign medical school. I didn't get very good grades in college, and so I wasn't going to get into a United States medical school where they only accept 10 to 20% of the applicants. So I went overseas, and I really buckled down and I studied very hard. And then I passed the licensure exam along with a lot of my friends and colleagues, and did clinical rotations in the United States, passed another couple of licensure exams, and then I applied for residency, and I was very thankful to get a residency here in Hawaii, and this is the place where I learned to practice medicine. But many of my friends did not obtain residencies. They went through the same training as me. They got passing scores on all of the licensing exams, and today they don't work in healthcare. Why is it that these people who have gone through all of the requisite training and passed the exams can't work in healthcare? Well, it turns out that there's an organization called the ACGME, the American Council on Graduate Medical Education, that accredits residency programs. There are a lot of requirements for a residency program that make the cost to educate a resident higher than $200,000 for a typical residency. It's something that a private hospital is just not going to pay for. Now that's fine, because Medicare pays for it. But in the mid-90s, the American Medical Association, in conjunction with Congress, said, hey, we have an oversupply of doctors. And there was a budget crisis, and they said, why don't we cap the number of residencies that are funded by Medicare, thereby capping the number of doctors who can actually go on to get a medical license. And so they did that. They capped the number of residents. And now we're suffering under a system where we have a severe doctor shortage, especially in our rural areas, and people are dying. Everyone here in this room knows that supply and demand are what determine prices, and that scarcity drives profits. If you're able to create artificial scarcity in your profession, whether that is driving taxis or whether that's treating patients, you can drive up your prices and you can drive up your profits. But doctors aren't the only tentacle on this evil octopus of cartels. Hospitals are very, very guilty, especially here in the state of Hawaii. What if I told you that if you own a hospital in the state of Hawaii, anyone who wanted to open a new hospital to compete with you would essentially have to get your permission? That is the effect of a certificate of need law. And we have them here in Hawaii. So Maui went through a very long process, greater than 10 years, of trying to get a certificate of need law to get a second hospital. And in fact, in most of the United States, people are operating under certificate of need laws. And what you have, as a result, is a shortage of hospital beds. So about 8 months ago, I was working overnight at a tertiary care facility in Washington State. And I had a critically ill patient come in, very critically ill. I needed to intubate that patient, put central lines in that patient, have this person on vasopressors. It was a very seriously ill person on the doorstep of death. And so I told the nursing staff, the bed manager, hey, I need an ICU bed for this patient. She said, sorry, we don't have any available. Sometimes this happens. So I got on the phone and started calling around. And what I found was that there wasn't a critical care bed available in the entire city. So I had to make the very difficult decision. Do I put this person on the doorstep of death on an airplane and send them across the state? Or do I manage their critical illness in the ER where we don't have as much expertise and we don't have as many of the appropriate resources? And in that case I said, well, I don't think they're going to make it if I put them on an airplane. So I managed them in the ER, and luckily they did all right. That person ended up walking out of the hospital, but it could have been very different. And the point is that certificate of need laws are the root cause of a bed shortage. And that bed shortage happens here in Oahu too. I've had instances where when I was a resident here, where we have been scrambling to find, for example, a bed for someone who was bleeding in their head. And people are calling around to hospital, hey, do you have a bed? Do you have nursing staff? The bed shortage is everywhere. People are dying. People are dying because of cronyism. And this is how it always works out. The government comes in and partners with private interests. They say we're going to keep the public safe, we're going to manage the system and implement top-down controls. And what happens is the private interests get very happy because they're restricting supply and creating scarcity and driving record profits. So let's talk about another area of record profits. Health insurance companies have been more profitable in the last several years than they've been in the history of their enterprise. It's mandatory to buy health insurance. If you can't afford it, the government will subsidize it for you. Prices have been skyrocketing. It's been busting household budgets. And the kind of insurance products most people are getting are incredibly subpar, with deductibles that are through the roof, with restricted networks, with the insurance company telling you who your doctor is. And allegedly, this was somehow the democratic solution to healthcare. And interestingly, it's still in place now under a Republican administration with a Republican Congress. The Libertarians have a better solution. Anybody here have had laser eye surgery? I had it about a year ago. And it was a great experience. And it became available in 1999. And in 1999, it costs roughly $3,000 an eye. Now today, if you go to Groupon.com, you can find a deal for perhaps $700 an eye. The price of laser eye surgery has gone down dramatically. If you want liposuction or breast augmentation, the price has gone down when you compare it to inflation over time. And yet, if you have appendicitis, the price has gone up. If you have diabetes, the price has gone up. Just your insulin can bankrupt you. Why have the prices for certain services gone down so dramatically, meaning that at one time they were accessible only to the wealthy, and now even relatively poor people can afford them? And other services, really necessary services, have skyrocketed in price. And the answer is because there's a functioning market in healthcare for laser eye surgery and for plastic surgery. and there isn't a functioning market for things like appendicitis treatment, diabetes treatment, and so forth. The problem is third-party payers. What's a third-party payer? Insurance, exactly. So when I go to the doctor, or when you go to the doctor, you don't pay the bill. The doctor says, well, you should get this test, that test, the other test, and then the insurance company basically foots the bill. No one in the entire process except the insurance company is thinking about the price. So if I want to go for laser eye surgery, I'm going to call up a couple of doctors who do that procedure, and I'm going to say, hey, what do you charge? Okay, how much experience do you have? Okay, what kind of a warranty do you offer? I literally asked my laser eye surgeon what kind of a warranty he offers, and he told me that if I had any problems for the first 2 years, I could come back for free. I mean, you're not going to find a general surgeon who offers such a warranty after appendicitis. So we have a functioning market. Why don't we have a functioning market in healthcare in America? Well, the story starts in World War II, when wage and price controls were implemented to keep factory workers' wages down to fund the war effort. Factory owners had a hard time retaining employees, and as a result, they created health plans that were not subject to the wage and price controls. And they said, we're going to pay for all your health care. We're going to bundle it all together so we can raise your wages. That became the standard. And then Medicare came on the scene, and Medicare did a very similar thing, paying for everything. At first it didn't pay for everything, but little by little it bundled everything together. And Blue Cross and Blue Shield, the insurance companies, were able to obtain special tax treatment for health care benefits paid through your employer. And so the incentive was there to bundle everything into these health care plans. This drove dramatic inflation, well above the general inflation, so that today almost $9,700 per person is what we in America spend for healthcare, despite the fact that most developed countries spend about half that and get similar outcomes. I like to say that Medicare as a program is perhaps the largest, at very least one of the largest transfers of wealth from the poor and the middle classes to the wealthy in American history. You've taxed everyone on any income they have. You've given it to doctors, you've given it to giant hospitals, and you've driven tremendous inflation such that even moderately wealthy people are tremendously stressed by their health care. So let's talk about the solution. After the tremendous failure that the grotesque authoritarian regime the Republicans have installed in Washington in regards to reforming health care has played out in Washington, it's imminently clear to me that the solution to health care runs through the Libertarian Party. We're the ones who will restore a market. We're the ones who can say to voters, look, with us, you have a very good chance of having health insurance premiums that run less than $100 a month. The Republicans, you see, want to keep the system largely as it is, where you have a bureaucrat and an insurance company executive standing between you and your doctor. The Democrats are offering a reform to that system. They'd like to take that insurance company executive and replace him with a second bureaucrat and putting those two between you and your doctor. The Libertarians are saying no. You should have a direct relationship with your doctor. Your health care should be affordable. We should have dramatic innovation and great customer service. Free markets can offer that. You know, when I was growing up, these things, cell phones didn't exist, and now even the poor in America have them. Markets create wonderful things. I'd like to see it happen in healthcare. I think everyone in this room would like to see that happen in healthcare, and I think we can do that. When we talk about the poor and the indigent in healthcare, we have to realize that it's very easy to help people out and subsidize them when the services are cheap. When the services become expensive, it starts stressing entire financial systems. And that's why I say, if we keep going in the direction we're going, we have an insolvent system. The train is going to run off the cliff. The money is not going to be there, and bureaucrats will start making healthcare rationing decisions, just like they do in the United Kingdom. If you have macular degeneration in both eyes in the United Kingdom and you're relatively elderly, maybe above 70 years old, their very compassionate socialized healthcare system will tell you, hey, pick an eye. What's your better eye? Okay, we'll fix it. And because we're very compassionate, We'll give you a taxpayer-funded eye patch for the eye we're not going to fix. This is bureaucratic compassion, political self-interest. And I don't mean to pretend that health insurance companies are angels. They're not. They are self-interested people who give very poor service to their customers. But in a free market where you can choose different health insurance agencies and where the services are cheap so that the majority of your care is paid for by cash out of your own pocket, the power goes back to you, the patient. And that's the only way you're going to have any security or any control. So the question is, under the Republicans, bureaucrats combined with insurance executives. Under the Democrats, bureaucrats combined with bureaucrats. Under the Libertarians, the patient is in control. It's very clear to me that we're the ones with the solution. And in 2018, I hope we can all go out there during the campaign season and tell the American people that we have a real solution to our healthcare crisis. It's through the Libertarian Party. And we can set America free, and we can make America healthy again.
Comment a little bit. I mean, you mentioned it starting during World War II, but I'm wondering if you could go back as far as the Flexner Report and some of the early origins of the American Medical Association and how that screwed things up.
Yeah, it's pretty sinister. So, medicine used to be divided under three kind of separate schools. You had the allopathic doctors, that's what I am, MD. You had osteopathic doctors, DO, and then you had homeopathic doctors, and they each kind of had different philosophies. At the time, honestly, homeopaths were probably the best because they were the least likely to kill you. But it alarmed a lot of the allopathic doctors because homeopathic doctors were gaining market share. And so a report was written called the Flexner Report. It ended up shutting down about half the medical schools in the United States. The homeopathic doctors were basically completely put out of practice. And this was in direct response to organized medicine saying, there's a surplus of doctors. So they got together and they said, we've got to stop this surplus of doctors. The poor, during this time, had a really awesome way of getting quality and affordable health care. They called it lodge practice. If you've ever heard of the Eagles or the Elks societies, these were, at the time, very large and popular organizations where you could join in this fraternal lodge, and you were kind of bound together by shared ideas and camaraderie. And you could get health care for unlimited access to the lodge doctor for about $1 a month. This was very unpopular with organized medicine. And there was a large campaign to drive lodge practice doctors out of practice and keep lodges from employing doctors. So doctors were very hostile to this, and there are even reports of doctors saying, oh, well, you're a member of the Eagle Club, we're not going to treat you. Here, go to your lodge doctor, even though the lodge doctor was more of what we would call a primary care doctor, and there may be other kinds. So there was a concerted effort, even before World War II, to restrict the supply. And again, it was done primarily with government, because they ultimately needed to use government to shut down the medical schools they didn't want to exist. So there's a long history in medicine of the organized medicine partnering with government to create scarcity, which ultimately is to drive up profits and drive out competition. Medicine has been a cartel for a long time, and we need to open it up. Joe.
Do you see any bright spots in the future?
Yes. So the question was, do I see any bright spots in the future? So the Affordable Care Act carved out an exemption for what they call health sharing ministries. And a health sharing ministry, there are 4 of them in existence and 4 of them authorized by the Affordable Care Act. And they're a group of like-minded people, Christian people, who said, we're going to get together and share our medical expenses. It's not insurance, but it provides many of the same protections as insurance because you pay an amount, the same amount every month, and when you have large expenses, your comrades, your people in the medical sharing ministry are going to come and help you out. And so there are over 1 million people who are participating in these health sharing ministries, and they're doing a really good job of it. So a family of 4 will pay about $249 a month for membership in a health sharing ministry. That's very affordable, and they're able to get good quality care. They retain control, and it's a great type of competition that says we're not going to play ball with the insurance cartels. Unfortunately, it's restricted to those 4 organizations. And if you're not a Christian, you can't join. I find this interesting because healthcare, or the individual mandate is in essence a tax. And what the law says right now is it's a tax that's optional for Christians and mandatory for non-Christians. To me, that's blatantly unconstitutional, and I would love to challenge that and expand health sharing to everyone so that we have options. And we have options, the best option's going to win. We're going to see better options for consumers.
Is it legal to not participate in the regular insurance? And I think in Hawaii it's not legal. You have to have like insurance. The medical, the share thing is recognized by the government?
So the Affordable Care Act actually recognizes those four ministries. They say it has to be a ministry, it has to have been in existence before the passage of the Affordable Care Act. So those four do have that, and they're exempt from all insurance regulations because they're not insurance, and they exempt their members from the Affordable Care Act's requirements.
I don't want to preempt anyone, but I'm curious about the international aspects. Where in the world would you find the best market for healthcare?
We have a second.
You need this.
So internationally, if you wanted to look into expat insurance policies, they're going to offer you two prices. They're going to offer you a price for any care you need anywhere in the world except the United States, and then about double or triple the price for getting care in the United States. So if you're an expat, you can get a lot more favorable insurance. Where in the world do they have the best kind of market-based system? I'd look towards Singapore. And no, it's not a completely free market system, but they have really found a great way of bringing the patient's decision into it by having really liberal use of health savings plans that allow you to even contribute towards your family, giving people an incentive to save. And so while it is a system with a lot of regulation, it's open in terms of practitioners and people coming from abroad. It's open in terms of lots of options, and there's a substantial patient participation component, and healthcare is very affordable in Singapore. So I would look towards those models where you see large market-driven components with lots of patient choice and control. That's the best answer I would have for that.
I don't need a mic.
Oh, okay.
I have a number of personal friends who are medical practitioners. I would like to get a copy of your presentation and distribute it to them and get their opinions. And I got a lot of other friends also who may be interested in listening to a true story from a genuine doctor. And the second thing I would like to know, how does this malpractice insurance running into tens of millions of dollars affect our insurance? Because I know a medical doctor, a surgeon who was practicing in New Zealand. He's a thoracic surgeon. He said he never heard of this one-time $1 million ridiculous lawsuit. All they need is a letter of apology or something.
Yeah, it's pretty toxic. I mean, I don't think anybody would suggest that we should have a system that doesn't compensate people who are injured by acts of negligence. But what's happening right now is that you can be sued for anything. That's the American motto. Anybody can sue anybody for anything, and it's very expensive. I mean, lawyers are themselves a cartel system, and they will charge you through the nose for defense. So what happens is you get sued for something that's frivolous, and your insurance company realizes that it's cheaper to settle than it is to fight the frivolous lawsuit. That unfortunately puts a black mark on the doctor's career, and causes problems going forward for the doctor. So what happens? People practice defensive medicine. And we have a very toxic mix because the patient doesn't pay for any tests. The insurance companies are paying for that. The doctor doesn't pay for any tests. So if I have someone coming in with a headache, I'm sorry, for me, the headaches get head CTs. There are guidelines that say they don't all need it, but headaches get head CTs. Why? Because I'm not going to miss anything and get myself sued. I don't pay the cost. Somebody else pays the cost. And this is one of the primary factors driving the massive healthcare inflation we have, is defensive medicine. I put people in the hospital who I could send home, but I'm afraid if something does go wrong, then I'm going to get sued. I get tests that are not strictly speaking necessary, but I don't want to get sued. And this is prevalent, it's ubiquitous in American medicine, that we all practice defensive medicine. And when it happens like that, we all pay the price. And so the solution, on the one hand, is to crack down on frivolous lawsuits, I think by disciplining attorneys who bring them. And then the second side of that is to bring patient involvement into the situation. So I say, hey, you should get a head CT. And they say, gosh, doc, do I really need one? And then I'm going to have to say, well, there are these guidelines with a scoring system, and according to the guidelines, you have a 0.025% chance of having something really bad in your head. Do you want to just maybe see how you feel in 24 hours because your neurologic exam is normal? And the patient would make that decision. And I mean, most of us, if faced with a $2,000 bill for a head CT, would say, gosh, with that low of a chance of having something wrong and with everything being basically normal right now, it might be worth just waiting and seeing. But people have to make these decisions. And right now, people don't make those decisions. And so the default is test because someone else pays.
The Grassroots Institute put up a survey the other day about the cost of living in Hawaii being very high and what reasons do you blame that on. One of them was certificate of need laws, cranking up the cost of hospital care. But someone else wrote in and said, oh, you obviously don't understand the healthcare problem. It's Big Pharma that's the reason. And of course, there's lots of reasons. There's certificate of need laws, the medical cartel, defensive medicine would do the tort laws and whatever.
Just to note, remember the people in Hilo can only hear people talking in the microphone.
So what about that multitude of causes and how do you disentangle all of that?
All right, so the question for the people in Hilo was that there's a multitude of causes, including things like Big Pharma, including certificate of need laws, including defensive medicine, and it's kind of a spider's web, and how do you disentangle from it? And that's a tough question. We need libertarians to be elected at the state, local, and federal level. And we need consumers to start opting out of the system. And we need doctors to start opting out of the system. So what does this look like? It looks like consumers joining medical cost-sharing initiatives and moving more towards I'm going to pay my own costs. And that means that we're going to need some initial legislative exemptions. And that would be my federal legislative strategy, if it would be to seek exemptions, seek, for example, expanded medical cost sharing as an alternative to insurance. And then it's a direct primary care for doctors. A lot of people don't know this, but Speaker Suki, a former Speaker of the House here in Hawaii, proposed legislation back in 2016 that would mandate doctors to accept Medicare and Medicaid as a condition of their licensure in the state of Hawaii. That's ultimately what made me pull the trigger and say I'm not practicing in Hawaii, because the political climate is too toxic for someone who loves freedom. So we have to fight against those, and we have to work towards moving more doctors towards a third-party free system.
Ask if there's anyone in Hilo who'd like to ask a question.
Sure. So just to sum up that answer, it's a multifaceted fight where I think we're going to be most likely successful in carving out exemptions and saying, hey, just let us be free in this little area and in this little area, and then building a parallel system that outperforms the main system. Does anyone in Hilo have any questions?
Yes.
Yes, I was wondering how you were does your solution guarantee access to health care for all citizens?
Well, there are two guarantees in life, death and taxes. We're trying to get rid of one of those guarantees here in the Libertarian Party, but to be clear, no. My solution doesn't guarantee anything, because you can't guarantee the fruits of one person's labor to someone else. But I want to say something else about that. There is no system in the world where people are guaranteed access to anything. People say that the British system or the Canadian system results in guaranteed health care. But I've taken care of people who've had known conditions. For example, carotid artery stenosis, which predisposes people to strokes. I've had multiple patients from Canada come down to Washington State with known carotid artery stenosis, stroke out in Washington, and get all their treatment in Washington, in the United States. And they were neglected by their supposedly compassionate Canadian health system. In the United Kingdom, they recently said, hey, if you're obese or you smoke, no more elective surgery. Sorry if your knee is bad, but you're too fat for surgery. This is not compassion. This is bureaucratic self-interest at work. So there is no such thing as a guarantee, neither under a bureaucratic system, nor under a capitalistic system, nor under some mix of that system. You have to be responsible for yourself. And so the closest thing we can get to a guarantee is a system where prices continually decline so people have more control and can choose things for themselves.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sir?
Given what we have today with the Affordable Care Act, what would the Libertarian solution be that would be able to overcome the great obstacle of people with pre-existing conditions?
Well, pre-existing conditions are a very tough nut to crack because you're right, you can't really purchase insurance for a pre-existing condition, just like I can't buy a car insurance policy after I wreck my car. And people can have very expensive pre-existing conditions. But in a free market system, they wouldn't be nearly as expensive. So let's talk about a common pre-existing condition, type 1 diabetes. You develop it as a child, it's with you for life, and you have insulin bills of about $1,000 a month. And that's really the primary driver of the high insurance cost. You do have higher rates of things like kidney failure and complications, but for the most part, it's just the insulin cost. Well, why the heck is insulin $1,000 a month? This is a drug that's been around from the 1950s, and the formulations of insulin we use today have been around since the 1980s. They're generic drugs that cost over $1,000 a month. Why? Because even entry into the generic drug market is dramatically restricted. So we would be looking at a problem that is a couple of orders of magnitude less severe under a libertarian system, because generic, low-cost, affordable treatments would be affordable for so many more people. And so my message is, when you take the number of people who can't afford their care, and you shrink it because the price goes down, and then you have this much smaller group of people who need help. And that smaller group of people needs cheaper help because the costs are lower. It becomes like 1,000-fold easier to manage. And so rather than having these huge bruising fights over 30% of our GDP, we can be talking about something that's 1 or 2% of our GDP. All of a sudden we don't have to, gouge each other's eyes out over this. It's a small expense, and we can figure out, like rational, normal people, how to take care of the people who really need our help. It's not actually that hard once we've managed the cost problem.
Even charity becomes more
Charity becomes viable when the price is that low. So it looks like we're actually running out of time. So thank you, everyone, and I'll definitely be around to answer other questions.
to put together a good recommendation list to the whole group. So thank you very much for doing this. Well, our group thought, well, it would be good for us to develop candidates who could be eloquent and spread the message, such as Ron Paul has done over the years very effectively. We thought that one good way of doing this is to be much more effective at recruiting and vetting, not only to get good speakers on our behalf, but also to vet them. In other words, to help to see that they are really giving a libertarian message. And one way that we can do that is through regular gatherings, maybe dinners, and have a lot of good discussion among ourselves, but also maybe regular educational process where we might be able to develop a theme and talk about different topics and help our own membership in developing our own thinking. We thought it would be good to have a broader base with more people. Of course, if we have 90 members in our organization, we have a limit on good candidates and speakers from among that number. But if we have several hundred, then we can even draw more people. And so it was suggested by Matt that we have a location, a building, headquarters, local, where we could gather regularly, where we could feel safe and comfortable and friendly place for camaraderie and regular activities. And he's even offered to help fund that original place. And then, of course, the question was how to deal with fringe freaks, Well, we're not sure exactly how to do that, but that will always be an issue, and that's true of every political movement, as everyone can attest to.
I'm putting nuts instead of French freaks.
But a good way of doing that is to have regular sessions where we talk about the issues and inform each other about always bringing us back to principle, and then how to apply the principle to all the issues. And then to try and draw people out of being single issue candidates to being able to address issues in a broad way, always going back to the principle. There were some other suggestions about focusing on solutions to local issues, to draw much more interest in our party by showing how we can, how we have quick and ready solutions to such things as housing and transportation and energy and you know, healthcare. A lot of issues that we really have excellent solutions to, and they're not so complicated, but they're not as well expressed or as developed as perhaps we could do. It's also been suggested that, well, maybe we shouldn't just write off the left. Maybe there are some people in the left that might be able to find some attraction to our ideas, and that maybe we might have an input and into the power structure here by working with people who might be sympathetic to our solutions. And with regard to the internet and making better use of the internet, some suggestion was, well, maybe we can develop more, but there is a lot of competition already out there. There's a lot of material already out there, but there are maybe kinds of things that could be utilized more to have us connect with each other and maybe build more attraction to events that we can host. Well, okay, so that's kind of a rough idea of the things that we talked about, sort of. I mean, maybe you have some more ideas. Who's next, Tracy?
Anthony.
Hello everyone, my name is Anthony, and had a great discussion with Linda and Mr. Coleman, and one of the things we mostly talked about was how candidates can get exposure. When I was running for office, nobody really cared about the party or even the issues. They just liked to know that you're there. So how do we, get exposure? Whether you love or hate Trump, he had a great brand. People have known his name for years. Make America Great Again. I mean, everybody knew it. So what can we do to get great brand and great exposure? It takes time and money. Linda recommended, the Freedom Party or whatever slogan it is. It needs to be catchy, because at the end of the day, they're not going to vote for you because you're a libertarian. They're going to vote for you. They're going to recognize you because of exposure. We need a brand. I don't know what the catchiest brand name would be. You got to sell yourself. Whatever it is, do you guys have any suggestions on what it is that's appealing to everyone?
Make America free again.
Make America free again, yeah. You can piggyback on, There we go. Hey, let's try it. You can do it with social media. You can do it with mailers or maybe TV exposure. Would you like credit for that? You want to copyright? Because oftentimes people think it's our knowledge of this thing, of the issue, but it really isn't. They just want exposure, and preferably good exposure. We don't want the nuts, as Tracy said. My God, I remember just seeing some of them and just scratching my head. They have a right to believe what they want to, but those guys, those nuts really did do more damage than good. I was trying to repair some of that on Facebook, it's not easy, to say the least. But hey, even though nobody won, you're still here, we're growing. And that's exposure, that's because we keep coming back. So hey, think about what it is that you can do to expose yourself in a positive light, not from the nuts, preferably, okay? So hey, one last thing, anyone else want to give anything that's on top of their mind for great exposure? Anybody? Come on, I know you, deep down you might know it. You got nothing? Come on, just think.
Great exposure, flashy. Let's let them think about it.
Oh, okay, well.
With the other people.
Well, we'd love to hear it.
We're going to come back to this. Josh is next.
All right.
Okay, hi everyone. We talked about a lot of things, but Helen, Daniel, and Ms. Schooland and myself. But I just want to go over a few. We narrowed it down to like 4. One is speaking with legislators one-on-one, legislators rather. I know this is something Joe Kent does a lot, wherever he went. There it is. Joe Kent does a lot, and that's one thing I think unique about Hawaii. I'm from Michigan, and in Michigan it's actually really hard to have to sit down with some of these legislators one-on-one. So that's something in Hawaii that's definitely doable in regards to issues, I mean, of course. Neighborhood boards, using those avenues. The gentleman that was here earlier, I know he was saying that one of their jobs is to make sure that the issues that are presented to those neighborhood boards are then funneled to the actual, the upper echelons from there. And then just like much similar to what Professor Schoolin was saying, is a screening process for the nuts. I was thinking, I don't really know exactly how it works, but for the members at large, I think they might be a good group of people to like screen, especially the more high-profile candidates, like Senate candidates or something of that nature. Just to give the nod or the nod of disapproval. And then the last one that we focused on, and this is the one I really want to put emphasis on. I think that we should stop focusing, at least largely, on elections and move instead towards activist events and issues. And I say this for a number of reasons. One, the definition of insanity. How many libertarians have we gotten into the State House or the Senate? Ever. 0. So, I mean, and I caveat this first to say that, I mean, there are probably a number of reasons that I'm not really aware of as to why it's beneficial to run candidates. It's not just for the sake of them winning. But I think the costs outweigh those benefits. We put a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of resources into these candidates losing. And it's not their fault. We've got damn good candidates. But the fact of the matter is, when that L is next to your name and there's an R and a D next to two other names, it's just not going to happen. And I think we need to stop pretending like it's going to happen. But so that's one thing. It hasn't happened before. I don't see why it's going to happen in the future. The second point is attracting more members. Why is it that libertarians, particularly libertarians, but any activists, why is it that they get involved? What is the reason why? Like, why your typical activist decides to get involved in a party or an event?
Justice.
Passion. Yeah. So I'd narrow it down to passion. I think it's, what it comes down to is that you have people that have strong beliefs and they want to act on those beliefs. And with so few activist events and focus on issues as opposed to elections, there's not much of an opportunity for them to do that. Okay. Third point. Okay. Legislation. So we can just spend more time on it. The more time we can spend on legislation, the more likely we are to actually get some bills or just issues, across successfully. And I'm sorry, I almost skipped it over. So attracting more members. If we focus on the issues and we focus on those events, we'll get more members, get more money. Yeah, and that's the last point, money. So insanity, attracting more members, we spend more time on legislation, and more members equals more money, and if we actually have results on these issues, we'll get more money as well, more donors. Sorry, it took a long time.
Greg, are you there? It's your turn. Can you get on camera and give a report?
Yeah. Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. We're a small group here in Hilo. There are 5 of us here in the room. And we have the people, like Greg's super busy, and most people in Hilo are super busy. So we're trying to see what results we can get for the party to gain more membership with limited financial resources, and basically also limited time from the people that are interested. So I know Tracy was real happy to have 100 members, but we're trying to think, how do we get more memberships? And so I agree with the last report that what we need is more members to be more issue-oriented and to go to activist event. And the question is how to do that with our limited resources. And so we didn't come up with any solutions, but we had I think, very good discussion amongst ourselves about how to do that. Maybe use social media more as a way to achieve those ends. And maybe even encouraging bloggers and pay people here to get more members and pay by success. I was very impressed, and our group was very impressed with Kyle's speech. And although we have a very good website, it's a little flat and not very interactive. And to see more speeches like Kyle's that reach to people's dissatisfaction with the other two parties, I think will start to attract people to our site, and then we can generate more interest, hopefully more membership. So although we don't have the answers, that's the direction our group was, the discussion went in our group is how to achieve those ends with the limited resources that we have. And so more videos, more attracted to young people, take advantage of the dissatisfaction with both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party right now. I think there's a big opportunity, and the question is, how do we take advantage? One of the things we circulated here was the simple 10-question sample your political views, and to discover that most people are really libertarian. In theory, if you get beyond what you think, their posture when it's okay, are you a Republican or a Democrat, and you really get to their views. And we need to tap into that. And so I think we're going to continue the discussion amongst ourselves and try to attract more membership. So thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Eric. I think when we get to the general discussion of your ideas and what other people have talked about here in Oahu, maybe we'll have some more concrete ideas.
Thank you.
Okay. We have one more report, and that is from Michelle's group.
All right. I have an idea. Okay. I'm totally gonna just take this for myself for a second. On Big Island, hey you guys, there's second Saturday in Pahoa. There's people that are active and in the community there that I've taken Libertarian stickers down to them. And then Hilo on the 17th, they're having a big cannabis convention in Hilo. If you guys want to check that out, maybe recruit some people. You might get, a 20% increase by one person. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, we have members involved in that.
Okay. See, and I know you guys, some of y'all come down there when I'm, anyway, I'll try to help too because I'm going to be at those. With the group, oh, I left my page. Can somebody give me one of the little pages with questions?
Here.
Thanks, Ken. Okay. So we straight up just did each question individually. So I'm going to run these down. So the first question, what is involved in being a candidate? And it was really good to hear. I think we're really consistent as a group overall. We want someone with integrity. We want someone well-spoken. We want somebody who's educated because that's marketable. So like stuff like that, especially, we want to find marketable traits in Hawaii and then find people that carry those, because I think that by and large, again, what we heard a couple times already, a lot of people are libertarian. A lot of people are libertarian. So now we got to find somebody that those people want to listen to. You know what I mean? Like, they're libertarian already. They just have to know that they're libertarian, and that means we got to talk to them and they have to hear us. So stuff we did not want to see in a candidate was inconsistency or flip-flopping. Like, if they don't know how we stand on an issue, we need to teach them. You know what I mean? If they're libertarian in every other aspect except these 3 issues, then we need to talk to them, see where their stances really are, see if that makes them divergent from the party in a way that we don't want to be represented. And then, you know what I mean, like try to teach them if they don't have an opinion already, kind of thing. So, no joking. I like that one. The no jokesters thing. So, being a candidate and standing in front of people is uncomfortable. People are, oh my gosh, like I hate being up here. I'm shaking. I don't like this crap. But it's important, right? You have to be up here and you have to look comfortable. And when you make these like awkward, uncomfortable jokes that other people don't find funny. It just ruins it for you. Okay, so sorry, I'm trying to go. We also talked about criminal records and how that represents what we want to see in a candidate and what we want to consider when we talk about that. So like, no, we don't want somebody that was embezzling money, but somebody who was a prostitute, who was a vice crime violator, we don't necessarily feel as negative towards, because the party doesn't necessarily believe in those types of criminal sanctions. You know what I mean? Gambling, prostitution, abortion, stuff like that, the platform, we don't, you know what I mean? That's not our business, right? So understanding like that kind of stuff, and going back to marketable again, like even if the party doesn't have a problem with what they did, does that damage their marketability as a candidate? So next thing, how do we attract more and better candidates? And I think it's kind of resounding over and over again. Finding these social action groups, going out to those social action groups. These people are active already. They're in an action group, you know? Showing up there and listening to them and going, hey, that guy sounds Republican. Oh yeah, I like what he's saying. And then when they have a break, they always have a break, go have a coffee with the guy. Talk to him for a second, kind of fill him out a little bit, and then invite him to one of these events that, again, hearing it over and over again, we should be having a regular event. But I think that we've talked about that before, and it's logistically difficult. So we also have to be engaged with that, like offering up your spot or suggesting the community center by your house, or just setting something up yourself, having a coffee, like doing those kind of things will help to bring out people. We put specifically infiltrate community events and organizations. So, but we did a quick list. I'm just going to run down, like NRA, Gun Club, Freemasons, Scottish Rite, motorcycle clubs, talking to professors at the universities, Pacific Legal Foundation, Harm Reduction Conference. Like there's a lot of opportunities to just find people who are outspoken. You know, even if they're not going to be a candidate, they'll be sign waving. They'll be interested in phone banking. They'll be interested in talking to people about an issue they care about. We need to just find a way to funnel them into our group and let them talk about the thing that they care about. That's how I'm here. You know, I care about weed and I care about access to weed, and bam, they got me here. And then it's like, yeah, I agree with that too. And then finding out that 85% of the ideals of the platform is something that I'm 100% on. So we just got to find those people that know they're 20% libertarian and then show them that they're really 90%. You know what I mean? Candidate support is the next question. Fundraising, candidate training. We discussed that a little bit. Helping candidates understand how to address questions they don't have an answer for, understanding what the platform is and how to refer back to that platform. I think somebody else said that. It's amazing. We've got to, where they can hear a question and go, well, the libertarian platform is this, and I don't have one, so let me fall back to, let me not just make up an opinion right now. Right? That's really what it's about. Don't let them make up opinion right now. They need to either say, well, I haven't explored that issue and I don't have all the facts, I'd like to get back to you on that. Or, well, the party stance falls where people's right to their privacy, people's right to their rights, their money, their whatever, and going on with that. So vetting, we heard over and over again, is super, super important. We talked about Facebook, free shit. Everybody likes free shit. We need to find a way, no, we make freedom free, you know what I mean? We just need to talk about we're not just talking about issues, we're talking about personal freedoms and but helping people see that too, I think is important. Getting a PR team is really important for candidate support. Just having somebody that can help you keep track of everything, and managing free opportunities, Larry mentioned specifically. So when you run for candidate, you get like 30, 40, 60 surveys in the mail, and sometimes you only get like a week to get those back, you know, and it's really hard to keep track of all that stuff, keep up with all that stuff. So having somebody who's just good at that to support a candidate would be great. So just having somebody that can manage, say, hey man, you need to fill out these, 4 surveys, or walking behind somebody and be like, answer this question, and just checking the boxes, and then whatever, some kind of support like that. The legislature question, lobbying, petitions, doing petitions online, using social media to help with that, and then bringing those petitions with you when you meet the candidates. Again, Josh talked about the candidates are super accessible here. I was so blown away. Like, In Texas, man, they lock the doors. You gotta knock just to get somebody, just to make an appointment. It's nuts. So using that kind of stuff. Using a piece of legislature that's unanimously agreed upon in the community to kind of get the libertarian face on it. Like, we should be trying to find issues that everybody cares about, everybody's 100% in agreement about, basically, but the Democrats and the Republicans haven't put their name on it yet. You know what I mean? I suggested towing. Uber driving is another one. Like, most states, Uber drivers can pick you up at the airport. So why can't they here? Because we legislated that. So, and a lot of people aren't happy with that. So just finding something like that. Membership and fundraising. We talk about Facebook again. The meetings being regular and public, addressing student groups and trying to recruit. Writing articles in the newspaper. So if you feel passionate about something that the Libertarian Party cares about, writing a newspaper article about that and mentioning the party. Are we able to mention the party in the thing? But like mentioning the party and they put it in the newspaper, a lot of people read the newspaper on the islands. So just getting the Libertarian name out there in those avenues, those are free things we can do. Phone banking again, issue-based crowdfunding. So we can't crowdfund for the party, but we can crowdfund for an event, let's say, to bring awareness to whatever, right? So, and still have our name attached to that. So issue-based crowdfunding. And then the last thing we talked about was if we disagree with a candidate, proper vetting came up again. So making sure that that the vetting is done and that the candidate is familiar with how to address things that we haven't discussed with them, with what the party thinks about stuff. Like having them understand the party's stance. And then as far as disagreements, addressing that in private, we feel like if we address it in public, it kind of makes the party look fractured, and I think that's a bad look. So making sure that we're addressing these things promptly and in private, or asking that candidate to explain further. Like, I'm a member of the Libertarian Party. I didn't feel like, you know, we felt that way. Is that a personal? You know, can you explain that a little further? You know, the no taxes thing came up a few times. That's scary to people if they don't have a little bit of an explanation. So if somebody says something and you see the room go, ooh, yeah, oh, well, could you please explain, you know, the libertarian stance on that? Or, you know, whatever. So I think that's everything. You guys, are y'all happy with that? I probably took 3 times longer than everybody else, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.